This is People on Halo Talks. I have the pleasure of bringing a fellow entrepreneur and someone who has gone through all of life's ventures to come to the point of helping others. Chris Mirabile, we are coming in from Florida. We're going to talk about NOVOS Labs. We're going to talk about being an entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about longevity. So, Chris, welcome to your first Halo Talks.
Thank you, Pete. It's great to be here.
So you won the NYU Stern Business Plan competition. So that's not an easy event or competition to win. So talk first about some of your personal life struggles, which I think people need to know about, in your perseverance and how that led you to be a forward thinker in our industry and some of the things that you're looking to help change.
Sure. So, when I was 12 years old, I was really interested in health. I picked up an issue of Men's Health magazine off of the newsstand, and I was inspired by it. And so I started to exercise and eat what I thought was a healthy diet at the time. And it really became integrated into my life. And so it was that much more of a surprise to me when I was 15 years old, and I was on a school trip in New York City, when I suddenly had a seizure. And it turned out that it was caused by a golf ball-sized brain tumor that was undetected and was growing for years. And so I had to have emergency surgery, and my life was flipped upside down. And so, having thought that I was healthier than my peers, it suddenly forced me to consider the difference between more of a superficial side of health, where you might be in good shape or good at sports, versus the biological true form of health, like how healthy are we biologically? And that was the beginning. I mean, it transformed me in many different ways in terms of my values and the things I was looking for in life. And to the point of being an entrepreneur, a lot of it actually came, not all of it, but a lot of it came out of that experience, where I decided I really wanted to kind of chart my own path, create things in this world, and create a business of my own, and so on. And I felt like that was the best way to be able to impact as many people as possible, because I realized how delicate life was and how short it could potentially be. So I wanted to try to make the most of it from the start.
Got it. And when you started on the entrepreneurial path, it wasn't necessarily first on the health, fitness, wellness side. You actually looked at building something in a commercial real estate market. Was that the first entrepreneurial venture?
No, so that's actually the last one prior to this one. The first one was in social networking. So the business plan that I won the Stern Business Plan competition with was for a concept called Hotlist. At the time, it was called College Hotlist. And this was when Facebook had gone from being a college exclusive social network to opening up to the world. And my business was aimed at bringing that exclusivity back to college students, but then it was also more focused on real world social life. So getting people out and socializing off of their phones or off of their computers, and actually doing things together socially. So we could show you anything that was happening in your neighborhood or even across the world, the venues that were the most popular for that night, the events that were taking place. And we had over 220 million people's social plans in our network at our peak.
Got it. So when you started that business, were you in school at the time?
It's a good question. No one's asked me that before, but yes, I was actually finishing up my senior year at Stern. I went to Stern undergrad, so I was finishing up my senior year when we started on that business. And then I went into private equity for my first year out of college, but all the while for my nights and weekends was working on this business. And then when we won the competition, my friend and I, we decided to quit our jobs and focus on it full time.
Got it. What private equity firm were you a part of at that time, since we're from the private equity ecosystem?
Oh, so it was a fund within National Bank of Canada that ended up getting acquired by Jefferies.
Gotcha. As you started, the business, let's talk about entrepreneurship at first. Did you start that from a personal frustration where you were trying to find events and you couldn't find them, in any kind of sorted fashion. And maybe talk a little bit about, picking your business partners based on, who your friends were at school, and maybe some of the pros and cons of that for some of our early listeners here. I think one of the most important things in any kind of entrepreneurial venture is, who do you trust, and who, what skills they bring to the table, and who's, responsible for what.
Sure. So a little bit of background. So I actually got involved with entrepreneurship, and so earlier when I said it was the brain tumor was a motivating factor, but not the only motivating factor. The other key motivator was I started programming when I was young, and I got a job in New York City when I was 15 years old, programming. This was right during the tech bubble, 1999, 2000 is when the tech bubble burst. So I got some experience in the entrepreneurial setting, and I was inspired by it. And that was part of the reason I decided to apply to NYU, was to learn business so I could become an entrepreneur. So in terms of the need for a business like Hotlist, it was really because going to NYU, being in a city like New York, something occurred to us, which was that my friend and I, that is, if you make a left turn on a Friday night and you walk down the street looking for something to do, you could have a very boring night. And if you only went straight or made a right turn, maybe you would have had the time of your life. The point was that there's so many opportunities, so many things happening, and it can literally just come down to making one turn or not, or entering one restaurant or bar or not. That can really dictate and have a strong impact on your quality of life and your enjoyment of your time. And so the point was to try to bring some transparency to the city, to the community, for you to be able to see what's happening around you, but then also to have some detail associated with that. So we showed, for example, pictures of the expected crowd based on people's RSVPs. So you can look at the people visually and say, oh, this looks like people that I would hang out with and I would get along with, or, oh, no, these people are much older than me, for example. I don't care to go to this venue. We also showed events associated with those venues. So you could find things that might interest you through either dimension, if you will, like an interest group or people that might be interesting to you.
As you kind of look at the ebbs and flows of how venture capital or startup companies, are sometimes motivated by, hey, I've got to get more events up there. And like, once I have the database of events, that's an asset. Or, hey, I've got to get these eyeballs. Let's not worry about how we're going to monetize this. Let's just get them. So what have you kind of learned over time, or how has your brain, when it comes to entrepreneurial opportunities, maybe fast forwarded to, I know where I need to get to, because I know I can't just provide a freemium service forever. So because I've done this myself several times, where I'm like, don't worry about what the revenue model is. Let's just get the community in place. Right. Has that changed how you've thought over time, or is that, talk us through that evolution?
It has changed for me personally, but for many of your listeners, it probably shouldn't change. So what I would say is, building a social network, we did focus exclusively on building up our membership base and not on revenue. We only focused on revenue in the final days of the company. And unfortunately, the company ended up imploding. So we were being looked at by big names in the tech industry, Google, Facebook, and others, for possible acquisition. Ultimately, a company in Asia decided to make an offer. We went through the due diligence process, and then after about 3.5, 4 months of due diligence, which was exceptionally long, they pulled the plug and they basically said, thanks for all of the information you shared. We're going to try to build our own version here.
Right.
And so we didn't have enough funds, because we weren't focused on revenue. We didn't have enough funds to keep the business afloat. We knew going into that deal that we needed to either fundraise another round of venture capital or go for the acquisition, but it's impossible to juggle both. It's just too much time. So me, along with my co-founder and our board of directors, decided that we should go for the acquisition. And unfortunately, we were left out to dry, and the company had to shut down as a result. So that was a very difficult lesson, which told me, well, you might want to start looking at revenue a little bit earlier than you did, even if you don't make it your exclusive focus, at least focus on it enough so that you can, be self-sustaining, so to speak, right? And then go for venture capital for scaling, for growth opportunities.
One of the things that, when I look back at Harvard Business School, I wish that there was a semester class that said, here's how you unwind a company, or here's how it's going to feel when you fail, or it's okay to fail, and here's why, and here's how you do it. Because I started a company back in 2000 to 2003, and like you, I'm sure you felt like this company is me. There is no bifurcation of who I am as a person and who I am as a founder of this business. And I leveraged credit cards and cashed out my IRA because I didn't know, and I never failed before, and I didn't want to be the guy who did. And I overextended myself significantly, and it affected me in various ways. So as you look at businesses now, are you able to kind of somewhat elegantly kind of detach yourself and say, hey, look, I'm doing an experiment. You call yourself a citizen scientist, if that's the right term, and say, I'm doing an experiment. I'm older. I'm more mature. We're going to run this experiment out. If it works, it continues. If it doesn't, it was an experiment and I gave it my all.
Yeah. So what you said resonates with me, because with this company, Hotlist, I came out of college and launched the business. I won the business plan competition. I raised millions of dollars of venture capital. I was on television. I was plastered on the billboards of Times Square. I opened up NASDAQ. I mean, we had many lows and many highs, but the point is that overall, I was succeeding in so many different ways. And to your point, I never truly failed yet in my life. And then this was, by all definitions, a failure. The business fell apart. My investors lost their money. And all of my friends or acquaintances, or, I'd go back to my hometown and I'd see friends from high school and they'd say, how's Hotlist doing? And they didn't know that the business had gone under, right? And so to have to face that and say, oh, it's not there anymore, you do feel like a failure. And so I spent a lot of time reflecting on that. I even turned to some spiritual books and not religious, but spiritual books, and trying to kind of like peel back the onion of who I am and why was my identity so tied up in my company, and what was I really looking for in that business? Was I looking for financial success? Was I looking for fame? Was I looking to help people? All of these questions were circulating in my mind, and I was thinking about them over a long period of time. And ultimately, some of those answers led me to found what I have now founded, being NOVOS. But with that said, it did teach me a valuable lesson about separating myself and my ego and my self-identity from my business. So I don't necessarily characterize it as an experiment, though I think that's a healthy way to characterize it. It's more of I think for me, it's more like, having failed, I've been through that before. I know what it feels like. And if I fail again, that's okay. I realize I've got so much more in my life, and that there's so much more to life than that. And so I think that part of maturing and getting older and having other things in your life, like loved ones and just a bigger context, I think really changes your vision on it.
I think it's important. A lot of the people that listen to our podcast are starting new ventures, maybe trying to hold on to something that they know is a good idea, but the timing's just not right. There's not financing for it. I really encourage people. I'll just say it right now. Take a deep breath and understand that you've given it your all, and it might not be the right time for this to work. And the return on your time going forward, you might have a negative use of your time by trying to keep something going that's not working for you, and it might stall you and open up that next door. So think about where you're really at, and look at it as if you're looking at someone else's business instead of your own, because there are opportunities that you could miss if you continue to run something out because you're afraid to fail or afraid to go to a dinner and say, hey, this didn't work out, or I've got money from friends and family, the money that they put in, hopefully is not a material part of their life savings or their required income. And I really think you gotta, manage through that and be transparent. And I know I've wasted years, trying to keep things alive that I shouldn't have. So I just want to take a minute there and, get your perspective on it and also share with people that, starting new ventures is, and it's a very low probability. And if you're an all-star batter in the Major League Baseball, you go into the bench 750 to 700 to 750 times at every at bat, and the entrepreneur is probably lower than that. So I just wanted to cover that. So thank you for that. So talk about NOVOS.
Yeah.
Talk about
sorry,
Pete.
Yeah. Very quickly, what I would add to that is like for people to not fall for the sunk cost fallacy, like what you have invested into the company. You need to look at this moment going forward, not what you have done in the past, right? Because that's going to lead you astray. The other thing is that our brains, we're cognitively biased towards what is known as opposed to the unknown. Oftentimes, the unknown can actually be far better for you, and there's much more opportunity, and you can get much further in the unknown. But we're biased to what's familiar, what we know about. So you're more likely to think that what you're doing is better when it may very well not be.
Yeah, that's a great point. So let's pivot to NOVOS. Maybe tell us what that means, why you came up with that name, and then the biological causes of aging. I'm sure we could talk about that for much longer than 5 minutes, but give us like the tops and the waves of what you're building now, why you're excited about it, and how you think that's going to help.
Sure. So we spent a lot of time thinking through the name for the business. We have to consider which domains are available and IP and trademarks and so on. But ultimately, we came up with NOVOS, which we actually think is perfect for us. NOVOS means new in Latin as well as in Portuguese. And why new? Well, because we want people to be as close to their new selves, if you will, as possible. And so essentially what we mean is we address aging from the root biological causes. And our goal is to slow down the aging process by as much as possible. And scientists have proven time and time again that this is possible. Not only is it possible, but in some studies in different animal species, including mammals, they've been able to reverse biological age. So that is something that is some would argue it's already been done in humans. That's a little bit more controversial, but the point is that it is widely believed that we will be able to, if it hasn't already been done, reversing biological age. And so there are these biological causes of aging, many of which have only been uncovered over the past 5 to 10 years. And they range from mitochondrial dysfunction to cellular senescence, loss of proteostasis, altered intracellular communication, genomic instability, also known as DNA damage, epigenetic alterations, telomere shortening. So telomeres are like the end caps of our chromosomes that protect our DNA, and they get shorter with each cell division as we age. Deregulated nutrient systems, part of the reason why our metabolisms are not as good when we get older. Stem cell exhaustion, so these cells produce all of our other cells, and you have fewer of them, and they're not as capable as you get older. Then there are 3 new ones that were added just this year. There were 9 that had been established over the course of, maybe it was a decade ago that the paper came out, and then 3 new ones were added. Inflammaging, disabled autophagy, and dysbiosis. So inflammaging would be like a chronic low-grade inflammation that continues over time.
So as you look at these 12 markers, are you able to get a diagnostic test which will give you an actual score for each one of these? Or is it more of, here's the indicators, we can't actually tell you where you are right now, but we know that these are things you have to improve? Or is there a quantifiable way to rank each one and know where you are on the spectrum?
Well, so For each one, not all of these can be easily measured, but some can. For example, inflammation. You can look at things like blood inflammatory markers, like HSCRP or interleukins. But generally speaking, when it comes to aging, what's most important is what's known as these biological age tests. So scientists have created different tests to look at different molecules within our blood, or in some cases saliva, to be able to then approximate how old you are biologically. Now, biological age and chronological age are two different things. Chronological age is how many birthdays you've had. Biological age is essentially how old you are biologically, which is correlated with your risk of mortality, your risk of morbidity or chronic illness, and is basically also how physically and mentally capable you are. As we know, when we're younger, we're much more athletic and resistant and have a lot more energy. And then as we age, that starts to decline. So the biological age is ultimately what is most important for us to know, right? And so there are many different biological age clocks out there. Not all of them are created equal. There are biological age clocks that look at your epigenome. These are the most advanced and most well studied to this point. Your epigenome is this layer that sits above your genes and determines which genes are turned on and which genes are turned off. And there are patterns to that as we age. And so these clocks detect those patterns and then tell you effectively how old you are biologically. And even within that category, there are first generation clocks, second generation clocks, and now the newest are third generation clocks.
So how are you with Novos here in short order, designing supplements to attack those? Is it a custom vitamin, type of monthly drop, or, talk about the actual product that you're providing here before we close out our first of many Halo talks, I think, over the years.
Sure. So we've created to this point 2 formulations. One is a patent pending formulation that has 12 ingredients. It's called NOVOS Core. It's the very first formula ever to address all 12 of these biological causes of aging simultaneously. Even biotechs and pharma, they're trying to address these one by one. We address all 12 with natural ingredients over the counter. We've done a number of scientific tests, in vitro human tests, for example, that show significant reductions in DNA damage from irradiation, from chemotherapeutics, and so on. And we've done a case study where we found that 73% of people taking our formulations had a reduction in their biological pace of aging, and 0% of people had an acceleration in their biological pace of aging. So those are the 2 formulas, NOVOS Core, NOVOS Boost. And then we also offer biological age test kit. And you take a small sample of blood by pricking your finger and then putting it on an index card. And that blood sample is then analyzed, and it is the most advanced biological age test currently available. It was created by researchers at Duke University and Columbia University. We licensed the test from them, and we can tell you your biological pace of aging. For example, are you aging 0.9 years per chronological year or 1.2 years? And the good thing is that aging is 90% lifestyle, only 10% genetic. So whatever score you have, you can probably improve it through supplementation, through diet, even through meal timing, when you eat your meals and when you don't, physical activity, improving your sleep. So we provide tons of free information. We're a public benefit corporation. If you go to novoslabs.com/blog, you can see a lot of content. We also have a free quiz where you can get a longevity lifestyle score to see how well you're doing right now. We have something called Face Age, where you can take a selfie, and with AI, we can tell you your perceived face age, but then skin health scores, and then give you guides for improving your skin health. All of that is free.
Right. Awesome. All right, great. Well, we'll put up all this in the show notes. Welcome to the Halo sector. Love what you're doing. We think with exercise, movement, nutrition, and more of these innovative tests and understanding of your body and your genes and your biomarkers, that we are going to change the world. So I'm glad you decided to pivot into this. We will call this the new Hotlist. and the one that matters most. So thanks for coming on. Great talking to you. I'm glad you made your travels towards our direction.
Of course. Thank you, Pete. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.